we're going to go ahead and get started. So we have a special guest here. Her name is Miss Tara Hibbler. She is a master's educated social worker out of Tennessee, the state of Tennessee. Remember, everything that we say here is for educational purposes only. So if you need something specific, then we ask that you reach out to the Viva Life Health Hub to help you with those specifics. And that being said, Tara, please tell us a little bit about yourself and 3 things that you want us to take away tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Like she said, a master level social worker. I am a victim specialist in the Memphis Police Department Homicide Unit. I work with victims of homicide. I also am a DCS inquiry coordinator, and I work with potential foster parents. The 3 key takeaways I want you to take away from tonight is: what is grief and loss, the 5 stages of grief, and how long does it last?
Well, we truly appreciate you, first of all, being here. I know that you have many years of expertise, not just in this area, but those areas that you mentioned. So we're really excited that you're able to talk to us and help us understand, what we would potentially are going through or going to go through in the future. And also, you know how we love preventive ways that we can address it, as well as actions we can take if we find ourselves experiencing grief and loss. So that being said, you have the floor. Take it away.
All right. So, what is grief and loss? So, grief and loss, or more or less, grief is the experience of coping with loss. And so, most of us, when we think of grief and loss, we think of the death of a loved one. But grief and loss could also be the loss of a job, the loss of a partner, the loss of a pet, a loved one. It could be of your community. We're dealing with the hurricanes here recently, so it could be the loss of your home. It could show up in many different ways. So what are the 5 stages of grief? Stages of grief is denial, also anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So let's get into those 5 stages. So denial with grief and loss, you could have difficulty accepting that grief and the loss is real. With anger, you could be, direct your anger in multiple ways at yourself or at somebody else for the loss of that loved one. Also with bargaining, you may imagine reaching an agreement so you don't have to deal with the loss of a loved one. Also with those 5 stages, you could deal with depression. You may experience the emotions associated with depression, including emotional detachment, also acceptance, and like eventually most people dealing with grief and loss, it's just kind of dealing with the reality that the loss is real and that it's still there. Many people, like when you're dealing with this, you don't have to deal with these stages is, linear. You don't have to deal with them step by step. They can show up in many different ways. There's like no rules to the 5 stages of grief and loss. So how long does it last? Uh, Typically, grief and loss lasts anywhere between 6 months to possibly a year, but we know that grief and loss could last much longer than that. It doesn't necessarily have to be 6 months to a year. So how do we deal with the loss of a loved one? You start by dealing with the mind and the body. You want to make sure you take care of yourself, and some self-care. Definitely could put that in there. Make sure that you're getting enough sleep, taking naps, eating healthy, exercising. We also want to make sure that we stick to a routine of going to bed and getting up at a certain time, making sure we're eating at the same time every day. We want to make sure that we attend to our emotions as well, resisting the urge to distract ourselves and getting lost in work and hobbies. We want to make sure that we're taking care of our mind and our body, and making sure that we're also reaching out to others and maybe talking to a loved one, talking to a friend. And also we want to, reach out, and sometimes we might have to seek a professional and maybe get some grief counseling going on. And it's okay to do that. So it's okay to not be okay. And we can reach out to the professionals to help us deal with that grief and loss. So also tips on how to support others dealing with grief. We want to make sure that we are present for our loved ones and our friends. And what that looks like is based on your loved one's needs. You don't have to be an expert at grief and loss. You can ask your loved one or your friend what they need. What do they need from you? Um, and you can help them. You can ask if they need help with anything, like if they need help with planning a funeral, planning a repast, and just supporting them in the ways that they need help. Um, and you can also offer to like maybe do the laundry, pick up the kids, or buy them a meal, or give them a gift card for groceries, or maybe even like Uber Eats, giving them those things that they may need. Um, and then also we need to pay attention to the cues that they may need, may need someone to talk to, and just helping them deal with that grief and loss, because not everybody deals with grief and loss in the same way. So just, we need to make sure that we pay attention, to what their cues are.
I think, well, you bring up so many great things. And first of all, thank you so much for explaining us the 5 W's about grief and loss. But I want to kind of back us up a little bit, and Viva Lifers and guests on the Zoom line, please go ahead and start putting your questions in the chat. If you have any, I know you will, because I think that we should, kind of back up and break down some of these stages that people go through. I mean, I
Mhm.
had my first real grief and loss, I guess, when I was 4 years old. My father died when I was 4 years old. And of course, children probably manage it differently based on their parents and how their parents are managing it. And I still have memories, of my father passing away, as well as over the years. I remember there are some things that I had to work through, in regards to forgiving people in regards to my father, because my father was an alcoholic and he passed away. He was a manic depression and an alcoholic. And he passed away at I would say, an early age, due to those things. And I remember, like you were saying, the denial for me. I was young, I didn't know. So I used to have dreams. I used to have dreams that my father was alive somewhere and that they were just hiding him from me. I also, over the years, once I got a little bit older and I was able to address with my grandmother and have a heart to heart conversation and let her know, you know what, I thought that you could have done more to help my
Mhm.
dad. And of course, that hurt her feelings initially. But as we talked about it, imagine talking to an 8 year old and an 80 year old, right?
Right.
As we talked about it, I came to understand that that was a disease that he had. And she did the best that she could, and the family did the best that they could surrounding
Right.
that. So can you tell us a little bit about, maybe some of the differences that people experience? I mean, you talked about it can happen in different stages. Can you maybe give us some examples of maybe some clients that you've had to, help manage through this, and the things that you were able to walk them through or talk them through?
Some of the clients I've dealt with working as a victim specialist in the homicide unit, a lot of the parents that have lost a loved one, particularly young loved ones, is they blame themselves for the loss and just trying to help them get through that. And sometimes, they may forget like the reason why this person passed away may be due to illegal activities, but just more or less just trying to help them cope with that. Um, because I'm not licensed to help them, break down that whole grief and loss. We do wraparound services so that we can get them with a therapist to kind of deal with that grief and that loss. Um, yeah, it's hard. It really is hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what, when you're talking about those wraparound services, there's so many options, I guess you could say. But I think when you're in the middle of that, a lot of people don't understand those, don't remember those options. And you were
Right.
talking about, sometimes we don't know what we can do to help our friends or our loved
Right.
ones when they're going through it, besides calling and saying, I'm praying for you, or blessings to
Mhm.
you. Is there anything you can do? When you're in the middle of that, you probably can't even think, what is it that can be done? So
Right.
can you kind of go back over that for us in regards to, some of the resources that are available, even if it's just local resources for you? I'm sure that extends, across the nation, and some other resources that are available.
Well, here at Tennessee, we there's two agencies that I work with that offer free grief counseling services. So that way that there's not a cost associated with it, because a lot of times, people can't afford to do counseling, or they may not have health insurance to pay for the grief counseling, and or sometimes their job may offer EAP and you only get 6 sessions. So a lot of times what I would do, is if they want to use their EAP, that's fine. But then here's some free grief counseling services. And then sometimes there are family members that may live out of state. So, I asked them if it's okay with them that I look for grief counseling services in their city that could probably assist them with that grief and that loss. Because a lot of times, like, I give people a packet of
Mhm.
resources that they can access. And then a lot of times people forget that I gave them that packet, and they'll call me back and say, hey, do you have any grief counseling services? So I go back to, hey, you remember that packet I gave you? It had a whole bunch of resources in it. If you don't like any of those resources, call me back, let's talk about it, and let's, maybe find some other different types of counseling and maybe support groups that can help.
Yeah, and
And
I
even also for the children too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, sometimes we forget about the children, right? Because
Mhm.
sometimes we're just trying to manage it ourselves. And when your children start acting out, that's when you kind of realize, what, they're probably affected by this as well. So we need to help
Right.
them with that. And a lot of times people do have pediatricians for their children, either through a reduced resource or they have insurance for that. But it's good to know that there are grief counseling services available in your state, and I'm sure in many other states. One of the things that, with the hotline, and I know it's called a suicide hotline 988, right? But I tell
Mhm.
people all the time, I'm like, call that hotline. And they're like, well, I'm not suicidal. It don't matter. Call the hotline. They can get you
Right.
to the resources that you need, because,
Right.
it's therapy, it's counseling. They can get you to the resources that you need, so that you can move forward from there. So I
I
think, go ahead.
Oh, so what I was going to say is, going back to the children, a lot of times I encourage people to let the schools know that this child has lost a loved one. And
Mhm.
sometimes when the child acts out, they can go ahead and pick up on, oh, okay, this is why they're acting out. They just lost their father or their mother, and then also able to offer those services as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That is an absolutely great point. And Viva Lifers and guests, if you have any questions for us, please go ahead and raise your hand or come off mute and let us know that you have a question to be asked. But I forgot about that, because even simple things like, for me, if I'm
Uh-huh.
traveling or when I was stationed away from home, I would let the teacher know that, yes, this is what's going on in our family. And if you notice anything that is going on with our child that you feel like is out of sorts, and I would also let the after school program know, so
Mhm.
that it's really a family environment. The children are with their teachers and their after school programs, what, 6, 8, 10 hours out of the day. And
Mhm.
it is really important that we make sure that they understand what's going on, so they don't just think that the child's acting out for no reason, and the child
Right.
gets in trouble, and then we get into this this cyclical issue that we do not want to spiral down. It looks like we
Right.
have a question. So let's see, ask to unmute. CM, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself if you can and ask your question?
Hi, this is Shauna McGinnis. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I just have a few comments, if I may.
Mhm.
Yes, please.
So, I have the honor of working with an organization called TAPS, and that's Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. And
Oh,
I
wow.
have, so I work with their good grief camps. I usually work with the teenagers, and
Mhm.
all my teenagers have graduated, but I work with young kids who have lost their parents due to something that happened to them in the armed forces. Either they
Oh,
died in combat or they died as a result in combat. And I do tell people when they're going through stuff like that, especially in the military, that that is a good source, right? That
yes.
I tell kids that it's okay to cry. I tell parents that we really shouldn't tell like the little kids, like, okay, you're the man of the house now, or you're
Mhm.
the woman of the house, right?
Right.
Because kids at that time take stuff like that seriously. So
Right.
for military folks, I always refer to them to TAPS, and they even have a suicide department now. So if you contact TAPS for military, someone will contact you within 24 hours. So that's my only
Oh,
comment.
what state
So,
is that in?
Huh?
What state is that? Is that California?
No, TAPS is all over.
Okay.
So
and
it's
then,
all over. They have good grief camps in different places. I usually volunteer at their National Good Grief Camp, which is in Arlington. Virginia
Okay.
during Memorial Day weekend, but they have good grief camps everywhere. And I
Yes.
tell those, especially the kids, because most of the kids I've learned that they grew up in the military and now their parent has died and they go to a school and now, you're the kid who dad killed himself. So it's like a way for them, that's their core group. And a lot of them
Right.
now, they opt out of their graduation so they can graduate with their friends in TAPS.
Right.
So
We have here in Tennessee or in Memphis specifically, we have a camp Good Grief. It's through Baptist, and they offer free grief counseling for children and adults. And then they also offer support groups. And then we have an adult support group for like victims of homicide and then other types of grief that we link them with here in Tennessee.
So what I'm doing, first of all, thank you both for sharing that information. I'm putting it in the chat right now. And if anybody else has any other recommendations as far as counseling services, transition assistance services in regards to this subject, please go ahead and feel free to do that. Also want to mention your local YMCA also has that as well. And then Tara, you mentioned also the employee assistance program. So just like we would tell our children's teachers, then utilizing your employee assistance program is actually very helpful for you as well. I say that, don't let your benefits go unused or wasted. You
Right.
are receiving those benefits for a reason. So utilize those benefits as much as you can and as much as you need. All right, Miss TM, you have your hand raised. Would you like to come off of mute and ask your question
Yes,
or
thank you
comment?
so much for hosting this. I really appreciate it. I have a question. I work with Palestinian youth in the West Bank, where the majority of the youth there are experiencing trauma, and the resources are simply not available. Do you have any recommendations of how we can have the community support each other? Because there's literally no resources. And soon we're going to need to go into Gaza, where the vast majority of the children have had their parents killed, siblings, relatives. There isn't a single child that hasn't had a family member murdered during the bombings. So what recommendations do you have in the way we can start creating interventions there?
Where are you located, right? Are you saying specifically in Palestine, or are you here in the
Yes.
United States and you are trying to help people that are coming over from Palestine?
So I'm currently located in California, but I work with youth in the West Bank. I recently relocated to California. I've been based
Oh,
in the Middle East my entire life.
okay.
But we have several counselors that are actually working on the ground there in the West Bank. So I don't know if you have any ideas of how we can create or what kind of like groups we can create that would be effective in addressing their challenges, because the vast majority of the children, like over 95%, are deeply traumatized.
And are those children coming to the United States, or they'll be staying over there?
They'll be staying over there. We've had 5 children come over to the U.S., but the U.S. has plenty of support systems where we can provide that type of support. I was thinking, like, what kind of groups we can establish, if you have any ideas.
Okay. Tara, do you have anything? If you don't, I can chime in.
I don't.
Okay, yeah, no problem. And if anybody else on the line has the same thing. So I know in San Diego, so for example, what we have is different populations of people that have come over to the area. And we've created community development corporations or resources that are associated with the different groups or populations. So one of the things I would do is I would reach out to your local community development association and ask them what type of resources they potentially have. Anytime there is a group of people, for example, when we have people coming in from out of the country, and some of them typically live in the same area and are still sending financial support and any other type of support they can back to their country or their country members. then utilizing them as a resource as well to help understand, okay, what are the things that we can do to send back to or get counseling service or help for people. The United States, and I can't speak for the United States as a whole, but the United States, typically when we're having these types of experiences going on, the embassies are the places that we a lot of times start out with to see what type of resources and everything that they have. If there are units over there from various volunteer services, as well as sometimes with the military, not speaking on behalf of any of them, many times if they're already there over there, boots on the ground, they have already started setting up services for those people that they are quote unquote protecting. And you can reach out to those services as well, or the people that are over there are able to reach out to those services. The Red Cross many times are over in areas as well. So utilizing the Red Cross and seeing what's available for anyone overseas or outside of the country in regards to that. And then hopefully that answers your question. That is a great question. And it looks like we have a couple comments as well. So let's see. I just saw that typically there are NGOs that offer support. Yes, absolutely. Non-governmental agencies that offer support. So thank you for that, TR. And let's see. Grief support groups, religious, non-religious, after the Maslow's hierarchy, lower level needs are met. So absolutely for that. And then LG, I want to commend you for helping those youth. It is unimaginable what they have been through and are going through. And thank you, TM, for asking that question. That is a great question. And when I get a chance to look up any other opportunities, I will try to reach out to you as well, just to see how we can be of assistance to you for that. All right, great questions, y'all. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I'm learning a lot as well.
Of course, this is the whole point of, having this health hub here, because we cannot know everything ourselves. And it's really important that we utilize each other's expertise and experiences so that we can make sure that we are rendering information that can be supportive and helpful to all. So I really appreciate that. All right. Anybody else have any questions or anything else you want to leave us with, Tara?
It's been a good topic to discuss because I can talk about it from a professional level and also from a personal level as well. So I definitely understand the stages, and I understand, about grief and loss, having lost a mother and a father and other family members and friends. So definitely, hits home for me.
Yeah, and that's a good point there. Professionally, how do you manage? I mean, you've told us where you work and who you work with. How do you manage being able to continue to show up every day for everyone else? How do you take care of yourself, if you don't mind asking that
Oh,
question?
no problem. No problem. Well, I definitely don't take any of this home with me. Like when I go to work and I'm dealing with, homicide, I don't take any of this home with me. And I'm, make sure that I take care of myself, my own self-care, and make sure I'm able to show up every day and be a support to the families that I'm dealing with. So, definitely making sure I get enough rest and, making sure I take some time for me. And like I said, bubble baths and, a little self-care, get my nails done and my hair done. And, just making sure I take care of myself first. And so that, like I said, I can show up for others and be a, help to them as well.
Absolutely. So that also incorporates what we talk about in the Viva Life 5, when we're doing our self-care, which for us includes meditation and journaling, exercise, optimizing our nutrition, our sleep, and our hormones, doing all of those things, whether you are going through grief and loss or whether you are in a high stress position that you are exposed to situations that could cause you to have grief and loss as well. I think it's really important. You mentioned before having those routines. Those routines are really important to try to get back on track from.
Right.
And we know you have to acknowledge what's going through. I recommend therapy for everybody.
Yeah.
I recommend therapy for everyone, whether you have the benefit or not. Like we said, we've given you free resources to be able to do so, so that you can get the help that you need. And, I think also having that supportive network, that supportive group, people that can look you in your eyes or listen to you on the phone and realize when you are actually not yourself, and that
Right.
when you are not healing from something. I don't want people to put their heads down in their job or head down, like you said, in these hobbies and just be in that forever. We know that probably initially that's what you're going to do, because that's how we're trained to be resilient in some ways. But at some point we need to open up the box, because if we don't open up the box that we put everything in, then we're going to increase our risk of high blood pressure, diabetes, significant obesity, leading to cardiovascular disease and other
Right.
things as well. So we want to make sure that we are, addressing these different things. So really appreciate that. I believe somebody asked a question about how they could get this information. So there's two ways. If you want it more immediately, we have something called the Viva Life Experience, and I think Sarah can drop that in the chat. You can join the Viva Life Experience and you can be a part of the inner circle where we talk about these things as well as give resources. And eventually this will come out on our YouTube channel, which is Viva Life Health Hub, VIVALIFE Health Hub, on YouTube, as well as our website, which is vivalifehealthhub.com. So we really appreciate that. And if no one else has any questions, comments, or anything that they want to share with us, this is what we have for the evening. We want to let everybody know we truly, truly, truly appreciate Ms. Tara Hibbler for her expertise and for, coming on and sharing with us. This is a significant, significant topic. And I know that we all need a little bit of a reminder and a little bit of training so that we can make sure that we have the resources that are available. And that being said, I'm Dr. Kelly OMD, your board certified OBGYN. Follow us on all our social media channels, Viva Life Health Hub, as well as Dr. Kelly OMD. We truly appreciate you and have a wonderful evening. Viva Life. All right. Thank you for being a part of the Viva Life Experience. I'm Dr. Kelly OMD, board certified OBGYN and healthcare executive. If you like what you heard, then please go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. The reason why is because we are trying to educate, encourage, and inspire 1 million people to live their healthiest and wealthiest life. And this is what we're bringing you. We're bringing you educational videos. We're bringing you podcasts. We are bringing you webinars with subject matter experts, including myself, about the topics that affect you the most. So go ahead, like, subscribe, and share. We are everywhere. Have a wonderful day. Viva Life.